What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 130 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Tuesday, December 16, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malum. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the world of baseball as the New York Mets made some noise on Saturday. They agreed to a 2-year, $40 million deal with infielder Jorge Polanco. This comes after a crazy week for the Mets and their fans, losing both Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso in free agency. Polanco, a guy who spent the last couple of years up in Seattle, was really impactful in the postseason for the Mariners last year, especially with his walk-off hit in the ALDS Game 7, everything on the line, and he got the job done. When you look at Polanco, though, this is a guy who's coming in to primarily play first base, a guy who last year was a second baseman and a designated hitter in Seattle. You look at the couple of years before that, 10 years up in Minnesota, where he was a shortstop. This is a guy who has not played a major league inning at first base, and he's probably going to slot in at first base with the Mets getting Marcus Semien to play second now. They already have Lindor at shortstop and still figuring out who's going to play third base, but it seems like there's a lot of young guys, especially with Brett Beatty being one of them, and relying on him to be the third baseman. Jorge Polanco, who had a negative 4 outs above average just at second base last year. He's on the decline in terms of his defense. This is a very questionable move, in my opinion, by David Stearns. You do look at his offense, and it definitely makes you feel better. 26 home runs a season ago with Seattle. That was his most since 2021, where he had 33 for the Minnesota Twins. But this is also a guy who has struggled to stay healthy throughout his major league career. You look back to 2018, only played 77 games, and then you look at 2023 recently, 80 games played. That was it for Jorge Polanco, 104 games the year before that in 2022. He has been able to stay healthy the last couple of years, it's looked like. 118 he played for Seattle in 2024, and 138, probably his healthiest year for a long time, 2025 with the Seattle Mariners. So 26 RBIs, or 26 home runs, 78 RBIs, 125 hits last year. The offense makes you feel really good. The defense is where it really goes downhill, and that's something that David Stearns is going to have to answer for, because going into this offseason, it was all about preaching defense, be better in terms of run prevention. He's lost out on Edwin Diaz, the top closer on the board, and his closer in Edwin Diaz, and he goes out and gets a first baseman. That's probably a downgrade in terms of defense when you compare it to Pete Alonso, who came right before that. So it's an interesting move by David Stearns. I don't love it right now from the Mets' point of view. It's a solid bat who can fit into this lineup, but they need a lot more where this came from, and that's going to be the question as the weeks go on. I do like that the Mets were aggressive early. They went out, got their guy. David Stearns got his guy in Devin Williams, but since then, it's been pretty ugly for the Mets. Losing out on Edwin Diaz, you lose out on Pete Alonso as well. You did make a trade, and you traded away Brandon Nimmo, a longtime vet for the Mets. You get Marcus Semien, whose bat is on the decline, but his defense is still strong. That's an interesting move there. When you look at it, you go from a great move defensively, getting Semien, to a very poor move defensively, getting Jorge Polanco. So we'll see what happens, but when you look at it, the offense is there, the defense is not, and that's really what it comes down to with the Mets signing Jorge Polanco. Let's shift things to football as the New York Jets were in action on Sunday. They were down in Jacksonville taking on the red-hot Jacksonville Jaguars, who came into the game on a 4-game win streak, and this one was all Jaguars. 48-20 the final. Jaguars moved to 10-4 on the year. Jets fall to 3-11. Just an ugly game all throughout for this Jets team. And Jacksonville, whose offense has looked pretty solid recently, they haven't looked that good. 48 points. The Jets had no answers defensively. And really, they ended up paying the price for it. On Monday, the Jets fired their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, after 14 games. It's going to be defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator Chris Harris, who takes over the play calling as the DC. When you look at it, the Jets, one of their worst defensive seasons in franchise history, 30th in points allowed per game. 32nd in takeaways, 29th in rush yards allowed per game. Just everywhere you look, the Jets struggled on defense, and it was time, considering that a lot of these players really weren't listening to Steve Wilks anymore. They did not have the confidence in their DC, and really it proves that with a 48-point outburst by the Jacksonville Jaguars. When you look at the offensive side of the ball, that really didn't stand a chance in this game for the Jets, as they were already in the blink of an eye down 14-0, already down 21-7. You do look at Brady Cook and you kind of cut him some slack. His first career NFL start, he found A.D. Mitchell in the first quarter, a clutch touchdown for the Jets after they went down 14-0. They almost settle some nerves, and Brady Cook finds A.D. Mitchell in the back of the end zone. When you look at the rest of the offense, though, they had that rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter by Isaiah Davis, but the game was already far out of reach at that point. A couple of field goals by Nick Folk, and the Jets put up 20 points in this game. Brady Cook was solid enough in this game, had obviously the crucial mistakes throughout. 22 of 33, 176 passing yards, a touchdown to A.D. Mitchell, and 3 interceptions. He was also sacked 3 times in this game. I think the biggest thing also on defense is sacks. Brady Cook sacked 6 times last week and 3 times this week. And the Jets don't get to the quarterback. They're bottom 5 in the league in terms of sacks. Bottom 3 now in the league in terms of sacks. 22 sacks on the year. They did not get a single one against Trevor Lawrence on Sunday. That has to change, and you got to see some confidence in this Jets defense. They just don't have it right now, especially after this 48-point showing by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when you look at the rest of the offense, Breece Hall barely involved. A game where you have a young quarterback, you probably go to your reliable weapons, and Breece Hall only gets 12 carries for 23 yards in this game. Yes, it came against one of the toughest run defenses in all of football in the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you got to get this guy involved. Only 2 receptions on the day for 14 yards, targeted twice. That was it. Breece Hall has to be a crucial part of this offense, especially when you have a young quarterback, a rookie quarterback that really doesn't know what he's doing in these moments in time. You have to get your best players involved, and Breece Hall is nowhere to be found recently. That's just a real bad spot for the Jets to be put in, especially with no Garrett Wilson in the lineup as well. So A.D. Mitchell was the star receiver of the game. Isaiah Williams also had 6 receptions for 53 yards, had a punt return called back due to an illegal block by Isaiah Davis on the sideline. Yes, that could have changed the game, but this Jets defense was stopping nobody on Sunday, and Jacksonville would have really taken it all the way in this one. They really would have ran away, in this game anyways, even if Isaiah Williams went into the end zone on that punt return. So an interesting day for the Jets. They also end up releasing Allen Lazard, who really was not involved at all this season. 10 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. He had 250 snaps overall for the Jets this season. I mean, it was the last straw from the Rodgers era. Let him go. See you later. And Allen Lazard is no longer a New York Jet. Probably going to sign with, I would think, the Steelers. Of course, going back to his buddy and Aaron Rodgers, that would not surprise me at all. But Allen Lazard, who is really nothing to this Jets offense throughout this season, ends up getting released on Tuesday. On the other side of New York, the New York Giants were also in action on Sunday. They were at MetLife Stadium, snowy MetLife Stadium, taking on the Washington Commanders in a snooze fest of a game, considering the records of both of these teams. It was really not a snooze fest. A lot of points on offense for both of these teams, and it was Washington who grabbed the win 29-21, and they moved to 4-10 on the year. Giants fall to 2-12. It's just all gone downhill for the Giants ever since that Thursday Night Football win against the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, the loss of Cam Skattebo could really add to that, but when you look at it, the Giants have really struggled everywhere, especially on defense. 29 points allowed to a Washington team that's really not great on offense. Without their quarterback in Jaden Daniels, they had Marcus Mariota starting the game, but the Giants lose their 8th straight game, and it's really been just ugly football to watch. You look at this game overall, Marcus Mariota, I mentioned him, not bad in this game, 10 of 19, 211 with a touchdown, no turnovers. When you look at the couple of sacks as well, the Giants got on them. That's a positive sign, but they really did not cause any chaos in terms of defense in this game. You also had the run game really working for the Washington Commanders. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, also known as Bill, had 18 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown in this one. Mariota also had 43 rushing yards on the ground. And when you look at this game for the Giants offense, Jackson Dart, 20 of 36, 246 with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Tyrone Tracy had a couple of touchdowns, one on the ground, one through the air. So that's a positive sign for Tyrone Tracy, but the Giants offense just didn't have enough in this game. Dart had that crucial pick in this one as well, and a guy who also went into the medical tent for the 5th time this season to be evaluated for a concussion. That's just really worrying. If you're a Giant fan, you have to keep Jackson Dart healthy, especially in these games now where the Giants are 2-12. This season's going nowhere. They're probably going to get the number 1 overall pick. If they do, it has to come with a healthy Jackson Dart to see what you have to evaluate, see what you can look at. Jackson Dart getting injured, also dealing with concussion problems, is never a good sign for this Giants team. So that's something they have to figure out, and we'll see what happens on that. But the Giants lose this one 29-21, an ugly game at MetLife Stadium in the snow, and the Giants fall to 2-12, their 8th straight loss on the year. Just a really ugly time in terms of a football fan life for both New York teams. But in terms of basketball, it's been pretty solid as we go to the New York Knicks as they took on the Orlando Magic on Saturday night in the semifinals of the NBA Cup. The Knicks win it 132-120 over Orlando. They get a crucial win against the Magic, who have had a couple of wins against the Knicks so far this season, but the Knicks had the answers in Vegas in this one, and it was Jalen Brunson who really stepped up for New York. 40 points in this one with 8 assists, 4 rebounds, had a steal as well, 2 of 5 from deep, 16 of 27 from the field. Jalen Brunson just did his thing, and Karl Anthony Towns followed suit. 29 points in this one on 9 of 11 shooting, 8 rebounds as well. A really good performance by Cat, and they had contributions as well from OG Anunoby, who shot the ball well in this one. 40 minutes and had 24 points, 8 of 13 shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Everywhere OG Anunoby was in this game. The Knicks did not get a lot of contributions from their bench in this game, but the starting lineup was on fire. Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart also getting involved, and the Knicks beat a tough Orlando Magic team by shooting 61% from the field. Just ridiculous numbers by Mike Brown's offense, and it's worked very well so far for New York. They got to keep it going as they now advance to the NBA Cup final, taking on the San Antonio Spurs. This one starts tonight, an 8:30 start, and the Knicks come in as 2.5-point favorites, total sitting at 233.5. The Knicks have to stop Victor Wembanyama. That's the story of this game. Try and limit Wemby and what he's been able to do. The Spurs get a huge win the other night against the Oklahoma City Thunder, really took it to OKC and gave them their second loss of the season, 111-109. That was a thriller in Vegas on Saturday. So the Spurs against the Knicks. Of course, the Knicks faithful are very happy that the Spurs ended up beating OKC. OKC's been red hot this year and probably would have beaten New York if they went up against them in this championship game, but you got a lot of confidence in the Knicks going up against San Antonio. De'Aaron Fox, as well as Victor Wembanyama, the stars for the San Antonio Spurs. The big question of whether a banner will be hung up in Madison Square Garden if the Knicks win this game. Yeah, that's a question for another day, but not a great sign in terms of an NBA Cup banner up in Madison Square Garden. Just doesn't really fit there with the rest of the history that will be around it. But the Knicks have to win tonight to end up getting that banner and end up getting their first NBA Cup championship. It's the championship game, 8:30 tonight. Make sure you tune in. The Spurs and Wemby against Brunson and the Knicks. The Knicks 2.5-point favorites coming into this game in Vegas. Let's finish things off today in the world of college basketball as St. John's took on Iona on Saturday at MSG, and the Johnnies ended up winning this one 91-64. They take down Iona and Rick Pitino's former team. A really solid game for Osiah Sellers in this one. 16 of his 19 points came in the second half. He led St. John's with 19 on 7 of 13 shooting. It was a very strong day defensively and rebounding-wise down low for the big man in Zuby Ejiofor, who only had 6 points on the day, but 10 rebounds, 8 blocks. Back-to-back games now with 8 blocks for Zuby Ejiofor. The first time in a long time that's been done. Really good sign for St. John's defensively. They really are getting Zuby going down low. They also have good contributions from their other guys. And Ian Jackson, who had 14 points in this game, didn't shoot the ball well, but really came up clutch down the stretch. He was really making shots in the second half for St. John's. You also had Bryce Hopkins, 6 of 8 shooting in this one. A calm 13 points in 18 minutes for Bryce Hopkins, and that's a positive sign to see for St. John's, who really took it to Iona in the second half. It was a bit of a struggle in the first half, pretty ugly when you look at it, coming off of that game against Ole Miss where they struggled mightily shooting the ball. They end up figuring things out in the second half in this one. You got to give St. John's credit. And, of course, shooting 52% from the field, that's exactly what you want to see from St. John's, especially coming off of that rough game shooting-wise against Ole Miss last week. So St. John's now heads into Big East regular season play, and they get their first test tonight. It's at Carnesecca Arena as DePaul comes in to take on the Red Storm, and St. John's comes into this game as 19.5-point favorites, total sitting at 151.5. Bit of a very high spread for the St. John's Red Storm. It's a well-coached team out in DePaul with Chris Holtman, but when you look at the St. John's big men, they really dominate down low every single time they go out on the floor. Ejiofor along with Hopkins. You also have Mitchell coming in off the bench. That's a sight for sore eyes when you look at it for the DePaul Blue Demons, who come into this game at 8-3 on the year. St. John's 6-3, ranked 22nd in the nation. So we'll see what happens tonight, but a 7 o'clock start at Carnesecca Arena. Make sure you tune in. DePaul taking on St. John's out in Queens. But that will do it for episode 130 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malum, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you all on Friday.